Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabbi Firli, may God forgive us for the mistakes that we know and the mistakes we don't know that we make. And may it be a blessed lecture. So, hello everyone. The title of today's episode is called Advanced Civilization Studies. And this, of course, would be something taken more seriously as the years go by and as human beings realize the significance of their position. When an entity finds themselves, when a user finds itself in a system and realizes that it has been given system administrator privileges, does not mean they're the system admin, but they've been given privileges in the system. By the nature of what we're given, our tasks in this life become obvious. And so by looking way more deeply at the source code of being here in this world, we find what we are required to do and where we are required to be. And so this episode is an individual human being's effort to talk about the second most significant thing the human attention can go on. The first is the system administrator of reality. I am Muslim. I consider that to be God, the one and only, a God that is not limited to worldly form. And simply the idea is a pointer. The idea of God points to a way more sophisticated perception on what is going on, and in some sense is a sort of beyond our perception, sort of complex processing. So we as human beings find ourselves in a system, and we are going through processes, and the whole species is going through a process. And in wondering about certain factors within that process the whole species is going in, or in some sense there comes a sort of hierarchy of what is important to pay attention to. So the first is the system admin, and then it's all right. So let's say it this way. Fundamentally, we're asking this question that what should we do in this system we find ourselves in, this existential system, even fine-tuned. Existence, by just being here, is a miraculous display of design, and this display of design is too fascinating and unique not to wonder about its greater implication. So in answering the question, what should we do in this system? And I'm answering because I'm human, I am answering from the position of human consciousness. But I do acknowledge that I am a soul as well. You know, one can say that spirituality is realizing um, spirituality is realizing that the significance of the essence of the individual is not individual, it is rather collective. You realize where you're present, and in some sense, you notice the system admin. Being religious is in some sense responding to the system admin. Anyways, the study of advanced civilizations comes after establishing and going towards the system admin. I would like to read some stuff for you. You see, if we, okay, before that, if I was to explain, if somebody was like, let's say, in a sort of future hypothetical situation, I was a professor of this, let's say, course or program called Advanced Civilization Studies. The core essence of that program would in some sense be to see, based on the current resources we have, based on everything we have as beings on a planet, what is the most advanced output. In other words, there's a current civilization that we're in right now, a certain point in, position in history, in this march of eons. And we look at the design and the frameworks accessible now, and we wonder about the most advanced possibilities. Whenever you see the word advanced, it is in some sense pushing you to wonder about what the most advanced expression of it could be. But when we have also this division of that which is metaphysical and that which is physical, when it comes to wondering about the most advanced metaphysical value, you come to realize that there is a limitation of self simply because you're not the system admin, you're a user in the system. But when we talk about advanced civilizations, the physical component of reality, it is based on what can be perceived, and perception is another way of saying being contained by you. So right now, it doesn't matter who hears my voice. Every human being will be, in some sense, my voice entering their ears, concepts arising to them. It is arising in that individual's domain of perception. When we talk about an organization, where again, it's like the fascinating question of all human beings that have ever lived, in some sense, could answer and or wonder about, and it's in some sense what is the most advanced outcome of the manifest human campaign. You know, so it's a question that is urging the past and the present to wonder about the greatest probability to reality. This doesn't mean we will know this. This doesn't mean it is this probability comes across just because what human beings did. It's just I see, in order to learn something, I firmly believe you need to become fascinated by something in that field. Okay? And if somebody wanted to be fascinated by advanced civilization studies, it would be in some sense wondering about the most advanced position of civilization and its expression. And of course, we can only give answers based on our generational access. The studies of this will become way more sophisticated as it goes into the future. Right now, we're in the era where human beings used to speak and then the internet came about, cyberspace came about, and now human beings are acting as mediators. It's as if like there's a value to our naturalism, because it is simultaneously, in some sense, being converted, into being transitioned or saved for the future generations digitally. So, right now, I think there's an incredible value of just being a natural organism and speaking, because in the future, we don't know how unnatural it will get. So, anyways, I want to read some stuff for you. And this is to open up and give you a certain view of what's out there. And based on knowing what's out there, you can perhaps contribute novelty to this field. I humorously consider myself as one of the first unofficial professors, you know, professors of advanced civilization studies, simply because I have engaged this idea from so many novel states that to me it's like my mind has danced with the potential reality of the human effort. So, anyways. But it's not something you can hold, because the mightiest position is realizing your own limitations and progressing forth to see how you can overcome these limitations. That means there is a downside to thinking you're perfect. You stop seeing your own imperfections. This is the huge issue with narcissism. Those people who think they are perfect, it's as if they have stopped updating. So we don't want to stop ourselves from updating. We want to rather see we want to see what's out there. If you were trying to study the most advanced animal, for example, right? Let's say lesser animals, you would in some sense see different types of animals, how they behave, what environment they're in, right? These would be of consideration for you. But one thing that the idea of an advanced civilization provides a common ground for individuals to think of how there will be collective value systems. Culture is kind of like a fractal of that. Right now, we as individual human beings, we're identifying, with, let's say at first, our sphere of awareness to what is our reality. But then there's cultural programs, but eventually it will reach a point where human beings will not see themselves too separate from what is happening. That means it's as if somebody, you can think of it this way, individual consciousness is a sign of an entity that hasn't taken any responsibility, or hasn't taken any responsibility for being, not any, but hasn't taken major responsibility for being, right? That means it's our identities are based on our individual physical mass, and also, let's say, our memories and our psychological database. However, our identities are not global yet. You can march ahead in your inner realms, in your mind's eye, in mind's vision, of course, carefully and appropriately, and wonder about, in some sense, the future's future. So your perception is important, but our perception is in an individual position. In the future, it will be in a collective position, collective identity. It's like right now, people are kind of like, in the prototype phases of it, of thinking that, like, for example, nationalism is a prototype of a collective global. It's like a prototype. It's not global, but it's, it's as if human beings have managed to agree that they're part of the same land. They're part of the same part of the earth, the same sort of behaviors and all that. But when we think about this, how sophisticated and fascinating at the same time, proportionately to the sophistication of it would be that we would wonder about what the global human being would be like. We would wonder about what kind of human being in the future would not identify as just the limited part of the system they've taken responsibility for, but they take responsibility for their existential, universal, their total being. To be responsible for your total being means that it's required additional layers of perception to consider what is outside of you. But at some point in this staircase towards an advanced civilization, the human identity will shift from a noun-like identification to sort of verb-like processing identification. So it's as if you will identify with events. So I'm gonna read some stuff for you. And we'll go from there. So these are some ideas on, moving towards the most advanced civilization that's currently out there. Okay. So civilization as a complex adaptive system, CAS, the acronym for it. Civilizations are living, evolving systems, networks of people, technologies, cultures, and institutions that constantly adapt through feedback, emergence, and self-organization. If one part breaks or is imbalanced, the whole suffers. For a civilization to truly evolve, it must be dynamic. Excuse me. It must be dynamic, responsive, and deeply interconnected, like a healthy ecosystem or neural network. So, to summarize this, it would be something like, think of a civilization like a big living brain. It has many parts, people, cities, laws, beliefs, all working together. If it learns, heals, and adapts, it thrives. If it ignores its problems, it collapses. A great civilization grows like nature, intelligently, humbly, and with balance. So see, guys, it's as if human beings have a responsibility to live in this system. And the discussion about the advanced civilization is in some sense about how it's the individual responsibilities viewed together are simultaneously a collective responsibility. So do you see, that means it's as if, let's say you are someone responsible for your, let's say, appearance. So you wear a suit and a tie. Now this would be as if like you were wondering what would an advanced civilization look like in suits and ties, hilariously, right? So do you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to tell you that whatever you are right now is a model. Okay, it's an objective, subjective, objective-subjective model. Okay, and this model falls into a context where it has fractal implications. There's moments where a person may behave in some way and people are like, yo man, that behavior was ridiculous. But then thousands of years, let's say hundreds to thousands of years in the future, that behavior becomes done by everybody and it's normalized. Do you see what I mean? That means like one person wore a top hat back in the day, people are like, what's that on your head? And then everybody started wearing a top hat, for example, right? So you can use the type of objective subjective model you are now and wonder about because your model is individual, you can wonder about collective ways that can happen. And you will be fascinated that if you give yourself freedom to perceive in different ways, you also have simultaneously given yourself a freedom to accept your own findings. Do you know? To accept, when I say own findings, your own understanding of what sort of system you're in. So we had this notion that civilization as a complex adaptive system. Sorry guys, just one second. So, sorry folks, I'm just gonna read a more updated version of what I was reading for you. Okay? So bear with me, please. So I said civilization is a complex advanced system. I'm gonna just reread that whole thing, okay? So academically, from general systems theory, von Bertalanffy, and complexity science, Santa Fe Institute, civilizations are CAS, complex adaptive systems, nonlinear, dynamic, self-organizing structures composed of interacting agents. These agents, for example, people, technologies, institutions, co-evolve, influenced by feedback loops, emergent phenomena, phase transitions, and tipping points. What are some key terms in this field? We have the idea of emergence, macro scale order from micro scale interaction. Cities, for an example of that would be the development of cities from individuals. We have some another key term which I hope I can pronounce, autopoiesis. It says in brackets here Maturana and Varela. Maybe these are the individuals. Systems that self-produce and maintain themselves. So we had one first key term, emergence, macro scale order from micro scale interaction, right? The individual leading to a collective outcome, individual events becoming collective, having collective significance. Then we have autopoiesis, systems that self-produce and maintain themselves. The next key term here is feedback loops, reinforcing or balancing responses. Example, political unrest to reform or collapse. And then we have edge of chaos, the sweet spot between order and disorder where innovation thrives. So what is the implication of this? Advanced civilizations are not static or linear. They are resilient, anti-fragile, and reflexive. The more adaptive and interconnected the system, the more it evolves sustainably. So pretty much a great civilization is like a living, learning organism. It adapts, feels, heals, and grows. It doesn't just survive, it evolves intelligently. So the thing I was telling you about how you look at the individual and notice collective patterns, the fractal was a point I made. So this is pretty much like the caste system, and which is taught in Santa Fe Institute and shared in general systems theory by von Bertalanffy. So in the study of advanced civilizations, we can say this is an idea. CAS, complex adaptive systems. Civilization is being perceived as such. Pretty much like a human being. Metasystem transition theory, MST. Valentin Turchin's MST from Evolutionary Cybernetics explains that systems evolve through integration into higher order regulatory units, a recursive intelligence structure. Its key terms: meta-system, a system that controls other systems. Control hierarchy, the structure of decision-making power. Recursive complexity, higher systems capable of modeling and improving lower ones. What is the implication for this? Civilizations evolve by forming planetary coordination mechanisms. Not centralization, but integrative coherence across sectors, geographies, and ideologies. Think planetary immune system, not empire. So pretty much humanity evolves when we unite, not as one government, but as one mind. Different organs, one body. That's real evolution. So I guess a suggestion of this would be, again, it's saying different organs, one body. So you can perceive that if the caste system was like perceiving an advanced civilization like a human being that adapts, when it comes to MST, Metasystem Transition Theory, wondering about pretty much what is controlling this system. So if we saw civilization like a human being, it's as if wondering about, is it just the brain controlling everything, or for example, is the heart required? You know, so it's as if it's a consideration that it's a sort of planetary coordination mechanism where integration is being prioritized, integrative coherence, compared to a sort of, let's say, authoritarian sort of, emperor says all kind of approach. So you're looking at it as one collective system rather than just, one part controls all the other parts. Then we go to Kardashev scale plus moral technical asymmetry. So physicist Nikolai Kardashev, 1964, proposed a scale for civilization advancement based on energy utilization. Type 1 controls planetary energy. Type 2 harnesses stars. Type 3 controls galaxy. But modern scholars, for example, Bostrom, point to the moral technical asymmetry. Our tech is outpacing our values, pretty much. So, key terms: Kardashev scale, energy-based civilizational measure, orthogonality thesis by Bostrom. Intelligence doesn't necessarily equal morality. So yeah, our technology could become like, excuse my language, but okay, I shouldn't say it. Our technology will become pretty much messed up. It could become like oblivious and arrogant towards us, which is kind of like immoral, With power comes great responsibility situation. Then we have existential risk. So in brackets here it says the X risk. Risks that permanently reduce humanity's potential. So what is the implication of this? Without ethical evolution, technological power accelerates civilizational suicide. The more powerful the tools, the greater the need for moral architecture. So yes, I mean, I guess it didn't explain too much about Kardashev's scale, but the Kardashev scale is in some sense seeing the different types of civilization there are. The Kardashev scale on its own is such a deep, fascinating library to enter that I'm telling you, there's that alone is like an episode. But type 1 is a lecture on its own. Type 1 controls, again, so Kardashev, his contribution was pretty much, let's look at it in regards to how it uses energy. But here, the orthogonality thesis kind of is suggesting that, all right, before this civilization, we wonder about how this civilization truly uses its energy. We have to consider the fact that technology is exponentially accelerating, and it may in some sense, what's the term, overshadow our morality. So pretty much it's like we're building godlike technology, but do we have godlike wisdom? If not, we might not survive the power we're creating. So we have to be conscious of extracting these ethical values in accordance to establishing a relationship with the system admin, and being fascinated to observe our system admin privileges. Okay, the next thing we move on to, integral theory. It says Wilber, I think it's Ken Wilber's AQAL model. Ken Wilber's integral theory offers a meta-framework for understanding development in all domains through the AQAL model. So it pretty much divides it like this, that there are quadrants, 4 quadrants, and this is based on internal, external, individual, collective. So we have the interior - individual quadrant, where it's about the domain of consciousness, like how the psychology of the human species will advance. We have the exterior - individual, which is in some sense how the behavior, the biological behavior of humanity will advance. And then we have the interior - collective, which in some sense is our interior collective relationship is honestly with our cultural programs and language and whatnot. So it has to do with culture and different values and the narratives we kind of tell ourselves. Then we have exterior - collective, which in some sense has to do with the systems, collective systems like government, institutions, techno factions. So anyways, some key terms from this field: developmental lines, emotional, for example, emotional, cognitive, moral, spiritual. We have vertical development, stages of increasing complexity, and we have an idea here called holarchy, which means nested wholes. For example, cells being organs, being people, being societies. The ability to perceive these as whole. What is the implication of this? A truly advanced civilization evolves across all quadrants, not just material. Inner life, culture, systems, and actions must all develop in synchrony. So pretty much it's saying it's not just about building better cities, it's about building better souls, minds, cultures, and systems all at once. So here what Ken Wilber has done is in some sense look deeply and come to the obvious conclusion that in all areas, in order to be an advanced being, we need to have advanced in all areas. Do you see? Just a second. So, guys, just to go over. Just to go over the key terms shared so far. For CAS, I'm just going to read this for you. So we add self-organization, order without central command, resilience, the ability to adapt, survive stress, emergence, higher level patterns arising from lower level interactions. Then we had meta-system transition theory. So we had complex adaptive civilization as a complex adaptive system, CAS. And then we had meta-system transition theory. And pretty much meta-system transitions are evolutionary leaps where multiple independent systems become a coordinated higher order system. For example, the jump from cells to organisms, tribes, nations. So human civilization will go through meta-system transition. Some more key terms for this: cybernetic hierarchy, systems controlling systems, recursive self-regulation, feedback about feedback, new sphere, NOO, and then the word sphere, a global mind layer. So then we go to, I talked about the Kardashev scale and the moral technical asymmetry. Pretty much for the Kardashev scale, a civilization that uses type 1 planetary energy, type 2 uses stellar energy, type 3 uses galactic energy. And also how there's a moral technical asymmetry to this. And then there's, for the key terms, there's value alignment, AI according to AI acting according to human values. Then we have moral lag as a key term, ethics evolving slower than power. So then integral theory, we read this. Now we go to game B, civilization. This relates to systems, innovation, foresight, metamodernism. So an academic explanation for this would be game A, civilization is competitive, extractive, zero sum, and short term. It externalizes ecological, spiritual, and social costs. Game B, emerging from collective intelligence networks, aims to be regenerative, anti-fragile. Oh, sorry guys. Game A is a civilization. Game A, it's kind of how in the previous talks I would speak about as civilization 1.0 and 2.0. So civilization, game A civilization, it's competitive, extractive, it's short term, it's kind of like trying to shine bright so fast, but the light's gonna be here, you know, for a lesser time. Anyways, game B is from, it's a type of civilization that's emerging from collective intelligence networks. And again, it aims to be regenerative, anti-fragile, and spiritually aligned. It builds sense-making institutions, distributed governance, and non-rivalrous economies. That means, you know, in the rivalry of economies, you know, so many markets are kind of like destroyed, you know, some of those markets having, you know, being significant, for example, having more of a value than just, you know, the financial aspect of it. So certain key terms in game B civilization, we have rivalrous dynamics. Systems where one's win is another's loss. Civilizational inversion, collapse due to structural unsustainability. And we have a term called hyperstition, fictional futures that become real through belief. So the summary for this would be: the old world was built on competition and greed. The new world will be built on cooperation, care, and truth. We need new rules for a new game. Then we have an Islamic civilizational model. It seems it's called Khilafa, Maqasid, Fitra. So it's in relation to Islamic philosophy and civilizational ethics. Here's the academic explanation. In Islamic thought, civilization is not secular. It is a spiritual trust, amana. Humanity is the Khalifa, vicegerent on earth, tasked with fulfilling the maqasid al-Sharia, the preservation of life, intellect, wealth, religion, and lineage. Civilization should reflect Tawheed, divine unity, Ihsan, beauty and excellence, and Fitra, primordial purity. So key terms in this would be amana, the trust given to humans by God, so what the system admin has tasked you with. There is a term called Tawhidic architecture, so urban design reflecting divine order, in some sense how ancient values are kind of reflected in modern times. We have ijtihad, which is creative, contextual interpretation of divine law. I think this is very important because there is that which is sacred, and then there is that which interprets the sacred. Anyways, it's pretty much to summarize this, it would be: a civilization is truly advanced when it reflects the light of God, serves all creation with justice, and helps every soul return to its true nature. Then we have the idea of reflexivity and world simulation, relating to the disciplines of epistemology, foresight, systems governance. So an academic explanation for this would be reflexivity is the ability of a system to observe, model, and correct itself. Civilizations that simulate their own collapse using forecasting scenarios or system dynamics are more likely to survive. This is tied to epistemic integrity, feedback sensitivity, and narrative pluralism. So key terms in this would be reflexive capacity, which means self-modeling and error correction. We have narrative ecology, the interplay of worldviews. We have civilizational metacognition, a society's capacity to reflect on its own thoughts and future. So a summary of this would be: the wisest civilizations see what's coming before it happens. They listen, learn, and grow before a crisis forces them to change. So it's zooming in on the factor of reflexivity. So in some sense, how much do we have an ability, just like how you have reflexes, in some sense, how much does humanity have an ability to observe the system, the model of it, and correct itself in accordance to that observations. Then we have post-humanism and techno-ethical integration. And guys, I just felt like explaining something here. Advanced civilization studies is a field as big as there are areas and dimensions to for civilization to advance. So anyways, post-humanism and techno-ethical integration. Relating to the disciplines of post-human studies, AI ethics, bioethics. An academic explanation for this: as we enter the post-human era where biology, machines, and consciousness blur, we must develop techno-ethical paradigms to preserve meaning, dignity, and autonomy. Civilizations must handle recursive self-improving AI, brain-machine interfaces, and genetic augmentation without losing the soul of the human beings. What are its key terms? Superintelligence. Machines smarter. What's superintelligence mean? Machines smarter than all human minds combined. What does recursive self-improvement, the key term recursive self-improvement, RSI. AI that upgrades itself. We have neuro rights. Human rights over brain data and freedom of thought. I've always considered this, but never knew the exact term. Neuro rights. So, to summarize, we're entering a world of gods and machines. This is not God in the religious sense used, in the sense of higher capability. But if we lose the human heart, we lose everything. Technology must serve the soul, not replace it. So, an overall summary of all of these: the most advanced civilization, academically and spiritually, is one that evolves in all dimensions: technological power, moral wisdom, ecological harmony, and inner awareness. It is a reflexive, adaptive, regenerative, spiritually anchored metasystem, capable of using its tools without losing its purpose, guided by ethics, illuminated by spirit, and designed for the flourishing of all beings. It integrates the best of cybernetics, complexity theory, integral philosophy, and divine wisdom into a civilization that builds both starships and sanctuaries, cities and souls, data and zekr. Means calling to the system admin. For me, if somebody says, what is the soul? It is our link with the system admin. It is where our system admin privileges are being. All right. Now, what I wanted to share and read for the viewers completed. And I guess what I can. I guess what I can share now would be, in some sense, how if I was, let's say, stranded in an island, for example, how would I dive into expanding this field of advanced civilization studies? For me, the immensity of the idea is like a mountain. So I see it that an advanced civilization is, in some sense, also suggests the peak of human evolution in all areas. And in previous talks before, I had considered, and usually how the human intelligence works is that you're comprehending things in accordance to the dualities you find them in. So, for example, there's so many ways to tap into any idea, really, based on you considering different, I guess, the polarity of the contexts. Through different contexts, there's different polarities. What does this mean? It means, for example, considering in regards to the duality, let's take a duality of visibility and invisibility, for example. And then we ask the question, is the most advanced civilization visible or invisible? Will civilization advance to a point that, in some sense, the transitioning of intelligence goes faster than human communication relay points? For example, do you see, I use that duality. I tapped into the idea. I wondered about what there is so far in the world that I'm aware of and what else there could be. So in some sense, it's as if the sort of homework assignments given for, let's say, this field of study, advanced civilization studies, would be those of considering the efforts of the past, the efforts of the present, and either you use the might of your imagination to visualize different probabilities in the future, or you just use the past and presents to data from the past and kind of reposition that and come up with new ideas. Anyways, where am I going with all this? The different dualities you can consider. You can consider in regards to individual, collective. You can consider in regards to ethical, unethical. You can consider in regards to, how do you call it? In regards to anything else, as if it's going to be a bright or a dark kind of advanced civilization. So any duality can apply to a potential possibility of a form now in its future. However, fundamentally, the branch of study of, let's say, advanced civilization studies, the Mr.Within, I guess, dialogue on this, that means what I'm sharing now with you, it fundamentally follows one core dualism. And that core dualism is, you can see it in the word, as if what do we define as not advanced and what do we define as advanced? And if you even perceive it in regards to the quadrants, like for example, and how Ken Wilber was talking about it, and previously even before, kind of like, reading now about who Ken Wilber is, right? I came to these conclusions naturally, that if you look at the human being, you kind of see a sort of hilarious Cartesian plane. Now, it's way more than two-dimensional, and there's many lines in it, but I would say if you were to just see two, you have the external internal, and you have the individual and the collective. Okay? So when I say this, you should be envisioning like you can envision a square from a 2D plane, but if you want to see more dimensions into it, you can envision in some sense a cube. So when I say that a human being has the dimension internal, external, individual, collective, you can add another line to it, even say visible, invisible, for example, objective, or a subjective to it. The possibilities there. I mean, internal, external kind of summarizes that, but you see what I'm saying? What I'm saying is that you thought that knowledge, perhaps I'm saying, you thought that knowledge was about just like there's data, you take in, they process the data, and that's it. It's not about, knowledge is not, I would say it's not like eating food. It is more about observing a certain form and then wondering what is the form of where that form is found in, and wondering about the relationship of the individual position with the collective narrative context to it. So anyways, to wonder, let's say, to honor this, what Ken Wilber said, which is, again, I'm saying you will naturally come to this, whoever you are, to this sort of perception anyways. Even if you hadn't heard my talks or Ken Wilber, you naturally come to this. So we have to consider, and I'll simplify it in a manner of speech, the advancement of the inner dimensions of humanity, the advancement of the outer dimensions of humanity, and then a sort of, I would even change the quadrant into, so the advancement of the inner, the advancement of the outer, the advancement of the individual, and that, okay, let's go with it. The advancement of the individual and the advancement of the collective. So in other words, do you know what that means? That means we should consider an internal, external position for even the collective, the totality. That means a sort of, what is the 8 billion group inner dimensions? What is the 8 billion group outer dimensions? And then you look at the form now and you wonder about its advancement. Okay? So if we look at the advancement of the human biological body, if it relates to the concept of speed in the fastest positions of the transitioning of, let's say, data from one biological terminal to another biological terminal, let's say through the advent of technology and cyberspace, through that channel, through that medium, in some sense we're reaching a point where how would I say it? It's as if our minds will move faster than our bodies. They are now, but they will move faster, kind of integrated with technology to a degree that it might make moving as a biology obsolete. This is a very profound idea, and I'm talking about it in 2025. It's the implication of, is the future, if it only values data processing, and again the asymmetry in the morality of it, the monogonality thesis, I believe it was called, by Bostrom. Pretty much I'm saying, if the value of being a human being is in data, it will lead to a sort of potential future where our bodies are just preserved in pods, so the human lifespan exceeds ridiculously, but we're living in subjective cyberspheres. That means our minds are living the external life, therefore the biological life gets less weathered down. See, this is me giving you an example how I took, how I looked at a sort of I took a form, a relationship, dualistic relationship, and then wondered about its advancement in application to like the specific form of consideration. Let's say it's the human being now. So that would be a sort of advancement of the inner dimensions, a domain where we're living as pure minds and either technologically maintained or otherwise. When we look at so externally, it would kind of be like less needing to be a physical form, less needing to be a noun, more being a verb, right? We can say that's there in the staircase of the advancement of civilization. We can take any part of it actually, right? Externally, how advanced it would be, you can say even the technology is going to be so fast that if we follow this logic of let's say the fastest, most advanced speed is the speed of light. If an advanced civilization is advancing at the speed of light, therefore it is an invisible advanced civilization. Do you see? This is even going to the point that it's invisible because it's reached the ultimatum of its speed. It's like we're advancing faster than light, so there's nothing to see, but it's there. Human perception is bound by the speed of light, like that. If let's say there was somebody like Flash, right, in the comic books. Now imagine Flash could move at the speed of light. The director directing the film would be like, yo man, we don't need an actor. We'll just say Flash is moving at the speed of light. Yeah. Now, because this lecture was called Advanced Civilization Studies, I will tell you to do something. Take it as a sort of playful assignment. It's nothing physical, it's just contemplative, this assignment. As one of the first assignments, and this is being given to humanity in general, every human being. Pretty much, take a moment, let's say you have a cup of tea or something, you just take a moment in this life of yours, and you try to see what quadrants or what layers of perception are active for you. That means if right now life means something to you, that meaning has a geometry to it. You need to look at the geometry of your own meaning, okay? Of your own understanding of your own values. Right? And once you do, I want you to wonder what the most advanced version of you would be. And the secondary part of this would be for you to wonder what the most advanced version of you, what is the most advanced world, or what would be the most advanced world of your most advanced self. And I'm telling you, just start from there, and you will be fascinated to realize that more than it's as if knowledge being something that somebody says and you accept. Knowledge is realizing you are a unique terminal of receiving reality, and you have access to an insight that no human being on this earth can have. It is unique to your design. It doesn't mean it doesn't conclude in general understandings, but it means that you are your own soldier in the battlefield. Your experience can be said to be not like any other soldier. Now, so to satisfy, if I was like somebody hearing that I should do this assignment, I would say, give me an example, right, to the instructor, right? So I would use my own. I would tell you mine. First of all, the main position I have is that I don't know, and it's beyond my control. That means it's beyond even formed control. But I would see and consider currently, I do consider currently, that the most advanced relationship a human being can have with what is here, this reality, this system, is with the system admin. That is the top of all of it, because it means that to reach the outcome of an advanced civilization, man has to acknowledge an advanced original power to it. So the system admin interacting or establishing a relationship with the system admin, regardless of your, let's say, outlet or terminal point, it would in some sense be on, again, it's one of the top tier most important things a being can do. As a user in a system, establish a relationship, interact with the system admin. The system admin is not in the system, but beings in the system have been so close to it that people may feel they are the system admin, but you're not. We have system admin privileges though. So the most advanced state for me would be to, in some sense, be in the rhythm and flow of the system admin, to be in the grace of the system admin. It is very important to me. It is the most important thing, I think. If before, when I was giving these talks, they were like, hey man, what are you going to do if they said you have to transition out of this world right now? And I would say try to build an advanced civilization as quickly as possible. But now I in my value system has evolved to a point that noticing the system admin is way more important to me. Than advancing a simulated system that inevitably returns to the system admin. So in my inner realms, it would be getting closer to the system admin, the truth of truths. Externally, the most advanced civilization, for me at least, the one I would like to see soon, is an advanced civilization that realizes how much information is lost in competitive analysis, in competitive progression, and realizes that there are so many hidden, untapped angles to every intelligent being here, especially human beings. That means you may say something in a crowd and the crowd says, yo man, who is this fool? But if you zoom in and see really what the human experience entails, what it includes, it is like super advanced systems walking everywhere. So an advanced external civilization would be a civilization with goals that means its aims. That means I don't know when we will see this, but it would be as if there is a sort of authority dynamic, it would be as if all the leaders of all humanity suddenly uniting to set out a goal, a mission of such an advanced humanity that all the errors and mistakes and behaviors we have now are ridiculous, and they are in some sense lag in the system. We're lagging because it's still a fight over resources, right? But imagine in the future technologies arise that in some sense make resource utilization globally possible in the most convenient and peaceful way. So if fighting over resources wasn't an issue, then the leaders of humanity would obviously have to go towards the behavioral, what the behavior of the human being would be in reality. And ultimately, just like they say, hey man, what are you doing? It's as if we're wondering, hey man, what is the humanity doing? Right? And because resource management and economic conflict wouldn't be an issue anymore through technological intervention, it would in some sense be a sort of leaders and humanity as becoming and moving towards the era of the global human, of the era of not a nationally cultural programmed bound, local cultural program bound entity, but in regards to a human being that is born caring for the world as if it is as if it is it, as if it is as important to it as itself. Right now, civilization is not effective because we in the individuals find themselves to be more important than the whole system, right? But even if right now you make the whole system important for yourself, you'd have inevitably come to a point where you'd be like, hey man, the system doesn't see me. It doesn't acknowledge the efforts, for example. So an advanced external civilization for me would be a civilization that has such a deep advanced vision that it immediately, even perhaps instantly shifts its ways, and it ushers in a new era of human beings that are not just limited by local identification. Do you understand? There was this whole argument that the future generations are becoming less intelligent. They're becoming stupider. But in some sense, if you look at it from a global picture, it's as if the system admin perhaps is nudging the future generations from slightly detaching from the values of the past, not forgetting them, right? Those need to be archived, but detaching from how the past behaved for it's to lead the modern human beings towards the emergence of, in some sense, the unified human, right? This has many terms. Buckminster Fuller called it the universal man. In my own field of talking about it, I have spoken about it as the advanced communicators, and those who have internal advancement, they become in some sense pilots, right? That have more major roles, because you can say human consciousness is an energetic ability to perceive reality, but the fundamental relationship we have with reality is whether we choose to be responsible for it or not. Anything you choose not to be responsible for, it's as if you haven't held on to, therefore it passes you by. Do you know? And that responsibility also has to do, for now in this current age, in this game A civilization 1.0, it is still bound to the expectation of reception, of reward. That means your interaction, for example, I'll use my YouTube channel, for example, right? Your interaction with this channel is based, like this, or any channel, any content or content creator, right, is based on how you value the content and what the content is providing you, right? Do you know? That means, for example, if I had made it very difficult to, let's say, access my content, then people's behavior perhaps would be different. But for me, I always tell myself, all right, the future generations are waiting to hear these too, maybe. Do you know? So for me, it's right now people have an expectation, right? And even as an individual, you cannot envision in the future a sort of collectively advanced civilization with and thinking that you're going to be individually significant. Do you understand? It's more like there's 8 billion human beings hilariously pushing a car to get it started, right? Imagine 8 billion human beings pushing this giant car called civilization to get it started, right? And the moment it gets started, the story, the significance of the story, the point of view goes into where the car is going rather than those who pushed it. So you need to have an expectation or result. You know, you need to have this feeling more than what you individually gain. That means the collective gain if it becomes more significant than the individual gain, then you're becoming more of a whole system responsible being. And that is very difficult because it's as if it's not an individual can become responsible for the whole system, right? It is more like the individual finds itself in the whole system. It becomes responsible for its activity that is a gear in the cog of this advanced machine. This, I shouldn't say machine, in this advanced mechanism. And it all depends on the system admin. It's actually beautiful. That means we can go as far as we have access. We have been given access. Do you know, that means right now I cannot, with the whim of my inner vision, just manifest advanced civilizations everywhere. The limits I've been given is, for example, being able to discuss it. For me, sharing an advanced possibility has for now, as close as possible, a value to the actual possibility of it. Anyhow, I guess I will conclude this lecture here in regards to advanced civilization studies. Whether you know it or not, you do have a connection because you're alive in history. You do have a relationship with all those beings and humans and souls that will enter this testing zone in the future. To advance civilization means to advance all that can be in where all of it is. And it's very beautiful because if your fascination is being extracted from the problems that you solve, the problems of the advanced civilization, it's honestly, I find this is why I am religious also, a reason for it, is because religion has in some sense, by its mere being here and still accessible to people, it's kind of given a solution, to how to connect with the system admin part. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. That part, there's an advanced approach to it, an advanced solution to that, let's say, problem or massive problem set. But when we look at also, and because there's an answer to that, now we are left with also, co-developing the solution to the problem set, the next great problem set of the advanced civilization. Do you know the external implications, the external and internal implications of our external and internal being now? To wonder about the advanced seems to be one of the most advanced activities. And you apply this in anything you're doing, fascination is sure to come. The fascination for advancement is a blessing, I find. It's one of the joys of life. Anyways, thank you for listening. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabbi Gfirli. May God forgive us for the mistakes that we know that we make and the mistakes that we don't know that we make. Thank you. Wishing the best for all generations to come.